Last video, I introduced the squeeze, with your ceiling coming down, your floor coming up, the space between them shrinking until the power that felt comfortable 3 hours ago now feels completely impossible. That's what durability loss looks like from the outside, but it doesn't actually explain what's happening. Why does that ceiling drop? Why does that floor rise? And why do some riders hold on to their capacity whilst others with identical fitness fall apart? So this video is about what's going on under the hood. Some of it is well understood, some of it is still being debated. I try to be clear about which is which. So when researchers look at what degrades during long rides, they keep coming back to 5 things. Fuel and how your muscles use it. Efficiency, how much energy it costs to produce power. 3, your heart and circulation. 4, the connection between brain and muscle. And 5, heat. Now these aren't separate problems. They do feed into each other, but I'm going to pull them apart first and then we'll see how they combine. Everyone knows glycogen matters. It's your main fuel for anything above an easy recovery ride. Run low and you bonk. We've been there, we know what it feels like. Simple. But here's what's less obvious. Glycogen doesn't empty evenly. Your muscles store the fuel in different compartments within each fibre, and that fuel stored closest to where force is actually produced, right next to the contractile machinery, that appears to matter most. When that specific store runs low, the fibre struggles, even if total fuel looks fine on paper. Jensen and colleagues showed this in their 2020 paper. Riders who protected that deep fuel store lasted longer. So they all started with the same glycogen, but they had different depletion patterns, different outcomes. This is why 2 riders can eat the same, start with similar fuel stores and have completely different days on the bike. It's not just how much you've got, it's where it's stored and how fast you burn through those critical bits. Now here's where it gets interesting. You've got different types of muscle fibers. Your type 1 fibers, think of those as your diesel engine. They're efficient, they're happy to work all day. Your type 2 fibers are your turbo, your Lamborghinis, your Ferraris. They are powerful, but they guzzle fuel. At the start of a long ride, you're mostly running on diesel. That's what steady riding uses. But as those fibers fatigue, as their fuel depletes, and they can't produce what you're asking for, your body has a problem. You've requested 200 odd watts, the fibers that were making it can't anymore. So your nervous system calls in reinforcements. It recruits those turbo fibers that weren't being used. The problem? Those fibers cost more to run. They need more oxygen for the same power. So now you're producing the same watts with a more expensive engine. Kilding and colleagues documented this in the 2022 paper. So after 2 hours, riders showed increased activation of type 2 fibers just to maintain the same power. Now, this is one of the main reasons the floor rises. Same power, but it's costing you more. Now, I should be honest, we can't watch this happen in real time. I wish we could. Nobody's sticking sensors into individual fiber types whilst you ride. But the evidence comes from oxygen consumption, muscle activity patterns, and biopsy work, and it all points in the same direction. So this follows directly from what we've just covered. Think of efficiency as, your miles per gallon. When you're fresh, trained cyclists convert maybe 20 to 25% of the energy they burn into actual pedaling. The rest becomes heat. That's just biology. Over long rides, your MPG drops. You burn more calories to produce the same power. Now, why? First, that fibre recruitment shift. The turbo fibers cost more oxygen. Second, as glycogen depletes, you rely more on fat. Fat's a great fuel source. You have so much of it, but it does need more oxygen to produce the same energy. It's like switching from petrol to a fuel that burns slower. Third, and this is less discussed, the muscle fibers themselves get worse at their job. Metabolic byproducts build up and gum up the machinery. The engine gets less clean. The efficiency loss over a few hours isn't huge in percentage terms, maybe a few percent here and there, but compound that over hours of riding and it adds up. You're not just imagining that the same power feels harder, it generally costs more. So whilst your muscles are becoming less efficient, your heart's facing its own battle. You've probably noticed this. Same power, but your heart rate keeps climbing, hour after hour. That's cardiovascular drift. Now here's what's happening with that. As you heat up, your body sends blood to the skin to dump heat. That's the blood that's now not available for your working muscles. Meanwhile, you're sweating. Plasma volume drops, less blood returns to your heart, so each beat pumps less. Your heart compensates then by beating faster. Hilding's group found heart rate rose about 8% over 2 hours at constant power. Now, that doesn't sound like much, only 8%, but that could push your zone 2 heart rate into a zone 3 effort. And they're the zones you set when you are fresh and they no longer apply. Worse, your actual ceiling drops. In hot and dehydrating conditions, studies show VO2 max can fall by about 5 to 10%. So your maximum capacity for delivering oxygen to muscles fails. So you're working at a higher percentage of that lower maximum. So that's the squeeze coming from both directions. So everything so far has been in physiology, what's happening inside the body. But one of the advantages of modern training data is you can actually see part of this in your own files. You might have seen it in Training Peaks. There's a metric called power to heart rate decoupling. All it does is compares the first half of a steady ride to the second half. If your power stays the same, but your heart rate drifts upwards, decoupling rises. In other words, it measures cardiovascular drift in the real world, exactly what we've just been talking about. When decoupling is low, your cardiovascular system is stable, stroke volume is holding up, thermoregulation under control, plasma volume is adequate. When decoupling is high, your heart's having to work harder to deliver the same oxygen. The ceiling is coming down. Two riders can have the same FTP but very different decoupling on a 3-hour ride. One might show only a 3% drift, the other might show 12. Fresh fitness is similar, durability is not. That's why this metric matters. It doesn't tell you how fit you are when fresh, it tells you how fast your physiology destabilizes with time. Now, to read it properly, you need a ride that's long enough and steady enough for drift to actually show. An hour of threshold intervals won't tell you much, the data's too messy. But a 3-hour endurance ride where you held a reasonably consistent power, that's when power to heart rate decoupling becomes useful. Now, it's not the whole durability picture. It won't capture your efficiency losses or your neuromuscular fatigue. But for cardiovascular stability, specifically, it's one of the cleanest numbers we've got. So far, we've talked about fuel efficiency and oxygen delivery, but there is another layer, the connection between your brain and your muscles. I had a whole video on this just the other week, but I'll go over it quickly now. So this has two parts. There's the muscles themselves becoming less capable of producing force. We call that peripheral fatigue. And there's your nervous system becoming less able or willing to drive those muscles. We call that central fatigue. Both happen during long rides and they affect different efforts differently. Newell and colleagues tested knee strength after 2 hours of cycling. They found a 15 to 20% reductions in how much force riders could produce. The muscles themselves were responding less to what the brain was asking for. But again, here's what's interesting. The nervous system was trying to compensate. It was driving the already recruited motor units harder to make up for that reduced output. Your brain's doing what it can, but it is a losing battle when the muscles just aren't responding. One thing that surprised researchers, so fueling during the ride didn't prevent this decline. Fueling helped with the other things, but the neuromuscular fatigue happens regardless. It is driven by the effort and the exercise itself, not just the available fuel. For explosive effort, the picture is even clearer. Claris and colleagues looked at sprint power during a 6-hour race simulation. Peak sprint dropped by about 7% in the first 2 hours and then stabilized. This maps onto what you've probably experienced. 3 hours in, your sustainable power might feel manageable, but when you try to respond to attack or a sprint for a sign, it's not there. Your top end is more vulnerable to duration than your steady state. The last piece of this puzzle is temperature. It ties several of the others together. Exercise produces heat, lots of it. Most of the energy you burn becomes heat rather than pedaling. Your body has to dump that heat or your core temperature rises, and rising core temperature makes almost everything we've discussed much worse. But recent research suggests we've been thinking about this too simply. It's not just about how hot your core gets, it's about the gap between the core temperature and your skin temperature. Perlott and colleagues published this just towards the end of last year, I think it was. They found that power output dropped in hot conditions, but core temperature didn't predict the pacing changes. What predicted them was how much gap there was between the inside and the outside. Think of it like this. If your core is upwards of 38 degrees and your skin is 33 degrees, heat flows outward easily. The gradient is steep. But if your core is 38 degrees and your skin is 36, the gradient is shallow. Heat gets trapped. This explains why humid conditions are often worse than dry heat. The air temperature might be similar, but when humidity is high, the sweat doesn't evaporate, the skin temperature stays high, and the gradient collapses. There's also something quite subtle going on. Heat doesn't just cause physical changes, it affects how you feel about continuing. So Perlo found that in the heat, riders didn't make the effort as harder, but they reported it as being less pleasant. They wanted to stop more. Your brain is protecting you from overheating, whether you realize it or not. So I've described these 5 systems separately, but as mentioned, they constantly feed into each other. That's what makes this durability problem so complex and why collapse often feels sudden, even though it's been building for hours. So glycogen depletion leads to fibre recruitment changes. Different fibre recruitment reduces efficiency. Reduced efficiency produces more heat. More heat increases the strain on the cardiovascular system. Limited oxygen forces even more reliance on those expensive pathways. Meanwhile, the neuromuscular fatigue is accumulating on its own timeline. And heat is amplifying how unpleasant everything else feels. Each system has its own trajectory. They don't all decline at the same rate. And this is why durability isn't a single number. It's a profile. One rider might have excellent stability in the cardiovascular system, but poor glycogen management. They'll drift less, but bulk harder. Another might preserve efficiency, but lose that neuromuscular output early. They can keep grinding away, but they can't sprint. Now, a third might handle everything well until that heat accumulates. Then they fall apart faster than their cool weather performance would predict. 2 riders with identical fresh state numbers, same FTP, same VO2 max, same peak power, give them 3 hours and they have diverged substantially. The fresh test didn't predict this. It couldn't because it only measured the starting point, not the rate of decline. I've tried to be clear about where the evidence is strong, but let me step back and acknowledge that what we don't know, most of this research used trained male cyclists. How much translates to female athletes or recreational riders or different age groups isn't always clear. Most studies use lab protocols that don't perfectly match real riding. Fixed intensities, controlled conditions, standardized nutrition. Real world durability involves variable pace, tactical decisions, changes in the environment, and psychological factors that labs can't capture. And also the individual variability is enormous. Some of this could be trainable, some might be genetic. We just don't understand yet. And the mechanisms interact in ways that are hard to untangle. When you measure efficiency loss, how much is the fibre recruitment? How much is the shifting substrate? How much is in the contrail machinery itself? Studies can estimate, but clean separation is difficult. And the direction of effects is clear. The exact magnitudes and individual predictions are much harder. So let me bring this back to the squeeze. The ceiling drops because your cardiovascular system delivers less oxygen under drift. Your neuromuscular system produces less force for a given signal. Your VO2 max itself might decline with heat. The floor rises because efficiency drops as fibre recruitment shifts. Burning more fat costs more oxygen. Metabolic byproducts impair the machinery. Different systems, same direction, less capacity available, more capacity required. This whole space is shrinking. And here's what matters for training. These systems are somewhat independent. They can be trained independently. You can improve your cardiovascular stability without really improving your glycogen management, which means durability training isn't one thing. It's targeting whichever systems limit you most. And that requires understanding which ones those are. So this video has been denser than the last, deliberately so, because the mechanisms matter. If you understand that durability loss comes from specific identifiable systems, each with their own trajectory, you can start to think about which ones are letting you down. Are you losing your ceiling? Is your floor rising? Both equally? At which point in the ride does the effort start to bite? That's the information you need before you can train intelligently. Not just do long rides, but do the kind of work that targets your specific limiters at the point in the ride where they matter. which is exactly what we're going to cover next time in the next video, how to actually train durability, not just as a vague concept, but as a set of specific adaptations. The squeeze is real, but it isn't fixed. The rate at which it closes is trainable. You just have to know what you're training. So I'll see you in the next video. Saddle up and ride. Thank you.